This study is really about looking to understand development as LNG as a fuel. And just to stress a few points about this study, we decided to do this because as Lloyd's Register, most of you have heard of us, we're a technical organization. We look at how to risk assess several assets for our clients. But when we look at LNG as an innovative marine fuel, a lot of our stakeholders talk about what is it, how would this develop, where would demand come from? And what brought us to looking at this from a commercial perspective is to try and understand what demand might be so that we can also plan our strategies to develop our capabilities internally and also help our clients to understand a little bit more about what demand might be for LNG as a fuel for shipping. We felt focusing on new builds is a key essential for this model, and also the fact that it will be mainly focusing on new builds projects rather than looking at retrofitting aspects. This is our vision. I mean, a lot of people talk about chicken and egg. Most of you have heard of that term. It's about what would come first, whether it's demand or is it infrastructure, who is going to invest in this? And one of the key questions from our clients is about where would infrastructure be? Who would give LNG bunker facility for them to actually go to a shipyard and order a ship that is LNG fueled engines? So our vision really, it's about identifying strategic ports and location worldwide that would provide LNG facilities. And also doing this, we then look at demand. Where would demand come from, essentially? And we build a model with our cooperation with Maritime Strategy Internationals. They're an economic consultant based in London who looks at this sort of thing intently. So we're collaborating with another consultant to help us understand this development. Again, going to conferences around, my colleagues, specialist colleagues, giving technical papers at different conferences, went to a couple of these conferences last year, and the feeling about LNG is really strong. I mean, in Green Ship Technology last year, over 75% of that audience said that LNG would be a marine fuel by 2020. And then we take another poll in Smart Shipping in Singapore in October, and they felt that, well, maybe 45% will adopt LNG by 2020. So there's a lot of development globally about what would this be and how could this turn out in the industry. Now, this is our methodology. I mean, it took a long time to actually shell out each part of this methodology, but we got there in the end. I mean, it was very explorative. It was very interesting, investigative process whereby we try to, based on what we know today, where are the established current bunkering oil facility versus LNG bunkering facility? What could identifying ports of supply, LNG supply, import and export supply, looking at routes or bunker ports that are in close proximity in ECA positions, defining the high volume trade routes within deep sea trades that could really essentially drive a consumption for LNG, looking per ship type, per ship size ranges. Another step looked at isolating different trade routes and in and out of ECA to try and understand what their fuel consumptions are and their percentage voyage time within ECA. And also then, taking two major stakeholders survey, we collected information from ship owners, from port terminals. How would they adopt LNG as a fuel? What is their strategy in terms of ship owners? What was the perspective of adopting LNG as a fuel? And really marrying all of that together, just to point out there's some limitations to this study. I mean, the study does not look at LNG ship engine technology. It doesn't include energy density, or it doesn't really take into account the size of tank needed for some of the ship sizes. Also, we were not looking at the implication of other emission regulations, what the fuel choice might be considering CO2 or nitrogen oxide emissions, and what particulate matter regulations might come in the future. And just to also stress that the potential future alternative fuels like biofuel is not within this study, but it's something that we will be looking at in the future. Right, we have completed the first part of the model, which is really drawing out all these major components and looking at the trade route volumes, the consumption per ship type and ship size ranges, the equivalent in LNG consumption. And then on top of that are the sentimental information we gather from ship owners' perspective and port survey. And we've produced that and published those findings over the past few months about what we've done with the first stage. Just to show you some of the findings, really. I mean, that's the third stage. The fourth stage looks at the high volume of deep sea trade volumes. The fifth process looked at the voyages of these deep sea trades in and out of ECA. Then we derive the voyage distance of bunker volume, average bunker volume per ship types and ship size ranges, and look at the equivalent of LNG consumption per ship sizes. And straight into the survey of the ship owners to look at what their options for mitigating emissions might be in the future. This is one of the findings we have from them. It's to really ask them what would be your options for mitigating emissions. And the main thing in the short-term level they come up with is that most of them would convert to distillate fuels and then perhaps look at some dual fuel arrangements and a scrubber. In the medium term, some would consider LNG as fuel, and a lot of people will look at distillate and also look at scrubber, HFO with the scrubber options. The long-term solution is mainly driven into LNG as a fuel. Most of the owners that responded to this will consider LNG as a fuel for their long-term mitigating options. And again, you can see clearly that not many of them will consider distillate as a long-term strategy for shipping. Now, looking at the port survey, we had lots of questions within this section whereby a whole set of questionnaire went out to 25 ports globally. Lots of these ports we gathered from were essentially grouped into two types of ports. One is a tier 1 port, which is really a known bunkering facility, part of the top 10 known bunkering hubs for oil. And also whether their proximity to supply terminal, like imports and export terminal, is close to that bunkering oil ports. The second tier 2, it's about ports who are considered themselves as early adopters, who have publicly stated that they would consider LNG bunkering facility to be installed in their ports. So these are the list of the ports, and we had 12 respondents. Most of them are within the oil bunkering, known oil bunkering top ports. I mean, we had lots of response from them, but this one really talks about what their main commercial driver or what would drive LNG as a fuel to become something they provide within their ports. And you can see that the orange bar there, the demand from ship owners and also gas supplier would push port terminals to put these plans in place.